This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
I'm going to start with the voice roll call. Leslie.
Second, please. Pat Rowe.
Here.
Tom Brown.
Here.
Leslie Button here. Salem Derby.
Present.
Dawn Gratian Moore.
Here.
Tony Corello.
Here.
Ann Longley.
Here.
David Kett.
Here.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Cindy Terrell. Here.
You'll have no members on. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of the 2/9/26 meeting, please.
Motion to approve the minutes. I second it.
Okay, we have a motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Abstain. I wasn't here.
You could still, he was late.
I guess.
We don't have anybody on the membership online. Mayor, the first old business, our request for $100,000 appropriation. You want to give us an update on that? That's what's on the agenda.
I mean, I think it would be appropriate for me to give an update on that and maybe a couple other things. If that's
fine. All right.
So as I think most of you know, and I think I've talked to a lot of people individually, we're in the middle of our budget season. And we started off with a $4 million structural deficit, which has grown because of increases in health insurance costs and other costs. I currently have some pretty significant capital requests and appropriation requests from departments for relatively basic services. So, you know, my thought at this time is that it's probably prudent if we're looking at a potential, I think that we're going to be good to fill the hole for this budget season. I think that next year is a very likely scenario that we're going to need to request an override in order to address the structural deficit. So that gives me a lot of pause as it relates to looking at a debt exclusion for a new project, because I can't really, in good conscience, put forward a debt exclusion for a new senior center at the same time as that we're going to be going for an override to keep basic services. So it's bad news as it relates to this particular project. I think, one of the things to keep in mind is this is not pulling the plug of the project, but it is, extending the timeline of the project. So, and I think that some of the kind of unknown variables around location, around size, whether it's a campus, whether it's a standalone, it gives us a little bit of time to kind of consider those options in a more measured way. Not to say that to get to this point, it wasn't a measured, process, or it wasn't a thoughtful process, because I think it was. I don't think necessarily it could have been predicted that we would have ended up with the $4 million structural deficit last year. That might have been able to be predicted. But really kind of the implications of the increase in oil and gas right now that we're facing, the kind of uncertainty from our federal partners around, funds that could supplement a project like this. So from my perspective as being the financial steward of the city, I'm in a position where I have to break the bad news of, I don't have the resources at this moment to put forward an appropriation at this juncture. I think that I'm going to be using the best of my creative abilities to say, when can we do this, in a responsible way as soon as possible, because I do believe that our seniors deserve a robust and appropriate space. So I just want to make that really clear. But given the current financial forecast, that puts me in a pretty difficult situation. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody heard that, from me. And, hopefully I'm happy to answer any questions around that. But, I'm really doing my best to make sure that we provide the best services we can as a city, and we don't put ourselves in a position where we're overextended or seem like we're, are filled with hubris to ask for just so much. So I just wanted to give that update to start.
I have a couple of comments because unfortunately, I was on the finance committee for 27 years. I don't agree, Mr. Mayor, that we have to wait. Well, let me start over. A feasibility study is something that we can put on the shelf, even if we have to wait 4 years for the override. I agree with you. If you need an override next year, putting another override on the same docket, it just doesn't make sense. However, the feasibility study could go forward. And I'll say that because I also know that capital stabilization has over 2 million. I'll ask you, do you intend to use that by moving it to general stabilization? Let me explain to anybody who wants to know. Stabilizations are savings accounts that don't get affected by new fiscal year, they stay. So I just have to ask you if you're going to use that money. If not, this is a capital project that is a resource we could use. And I'm saying that because a feasibility study is the next step. We can't judge whether the site's okay. We need the engineering for that site. If we have to go to a different site, we need an architect to tell us. We're not in a position. We've done all the work, as you mentioned, the ad hoc committee, about doing the what we want in a standalone center. And that's what this committee was formed to do. So I have to ask you, is capital stabilization a possibility? So I appreciate that. And you're right in a lot of ways. I think as we look at the city's financial well-being, in 24, we passed the financial policies, and some of the financial policies dictate what are reasonable balances to keep in stabilization accounts. And right now, just to be completely forthcoming, I have quite a bit of capital stabilization requests from departments that are going to put us pretty close to the lower limit of that cap if we approve those capital stabilization projects. Just a couple, our fire department is in pretty dire need of another ambulance. Now we serve Westhampton and Southampton for ambulance service, and it is a revenue generator for the city. So having working ambulances, having enough ambulances to serve our service area and for the residents, so we don't have to call in mutual aid, which takes longer, it's pretty critical. So that's just one example of the requests that we're getting for capital stabilization. Another one that we're looking at is I wouldn't say temporary, but Parks and Rec staff has been working out of a situation where during the winter, they were working in a garage that max got to 41 degrees. And so I have staff working in a building that is inappropriate for people to be working in. To me, that's a pretty pressing capital need. And I need to be, this is a little bit of triage. I need to take the projects that are going to have the most impact, they're going to have the most direct impact to citizens and to employees, and prioritize those. And again, I'll say that I'm not saying that we can't do an appropriation for a feasibility study. I'm saying at this moment now, I'm not in that position to be able to feel confident to say that that's a good financial decision. And until I'm in a position where I can say, and that could be when I submit the budget to the council, we'll have a much better idea of all the appropriation requests that have been sent, of what the final number is, because today I think we cut close to $1 million of things out of the budget requests, and that was so we still have more work to do with that. So to figure out exactly where we're going to be, we still have some time, and so I would say as an answer to that question or that comment,
for me, this is a little premature, but I'm not saying that it's not something that's not going to happen.
Okay, thanks for being, I'll get to you guys. Thanks for being transparent on that. Capital is used for those projects. All the members asking the mayor questions. I saw Tom.
So, Mayor, you're not saying that it definitely, the appropriation for the feasibility study, you're not saying that it definitely not part of this budget, that it could possibly still be?
So it wouldn't be in the budget, but it would be a separate appropriation from one of the
But it could happen
stabilization
in
accounts.
this cycle.
Potentially free cash.
Yep.
But like, again, we adopted financial policies in 2024 that kind of dictate best practices. It was approved by the Department of Local Services, and it kind of determines how much, if we have this much free cash, how much to go into the different stabilization accounts. And, that's really what we're trying to weigh against all the requests from the different departments of their needs.
So delaying the debt exclusion question doesn't scare me at all. In a perfect world, we might have been 27, 28 anyway. If it's going to be 29 or 30, I'm hoping we're all still here.
Me too.
But to wait for a kinder, gentler time when the citizens of Easthampton are prepared to financially support that. Just to give you a touch of background on it, Pat and I served on the school building committee. Our first meeting on the school building committee was in 2015. We put the shovel in the ground in 2022. 7 years that committee met to bring it to that point. There's a lot of work to be done even before we go. And I think we went for the debt exclusion the year before in 21. So 15 to 21 was all of the architectural and study, all the stuff that costs a lot of money. But so delaying that doesn't scare me because there's a lot of work to be done leading up to that anyway. But as Dan pointed out, it starts with that appropriation is what triggers that work.
We need an architect. Anybody else on the committee asking the mayor about the appropriation? That's what's on the table. Dawn.
I guess I just have a question. Is there sort of a time frame in which you might know if in this cycle that could work? Just in terms of the committee's work and when we're meeting, I think if there are two paths, if there is once we know whether there's an appropriation or not, where do we go from there in this next bit of time? So I'm just wondering if that's a general time frame,
So the budget meetings will be the first 2 weeks of May.
Okay.
So like once those are done, we're gonna have a very good idea of what the budget's gonna look like. And all of the people looking for free cash, all my departments looking for free cash, will have put those requests in. We'll probably have already sent them to the city council. So we'll have I would say mid-May, we'll have a really good idea of where we stand. And I would feel much more comfortable, looking at an appropriation if I have all of those components in place. Because right now, the picture is a little fuzzy. There's some nebulous things that are not quite in focus. So as they come into focus, then I'll have a better position to say, yes, $100,000 is money well spent during this significantly challenging time. Right.
Okay, anybody else from the committee? Pat.
Let's be honest. The two of you have been on the city council and dealt with the finances for a long
Too long.
time. A long time. I feel like you both kind of know the answer. I mean, it may seem like not a lot of money to in the grand scheme of the $50-60 million budget for the school committee. I mean, I'm sorry, for the city. I'm sorry. Wrong building. Sorry.
Sit at this desk.
I mean, you must have a better gut feeling that this $100,000 may not be coming our way this month, 6 months, or next year. I mean, I don't know what that means. It puts us on pause. Maybe it gives us but it gives us more time to look at where we are and what we're going to do. But I don't know if I don't think it's fair to anybody on this committee as far as our time and our talent and our, what's going on, or to the public for that matter, to kind of belabor the issue. I mean, if I were to put you on the spot and say, okay, by June 1st, can you tell me if I'm going to have $100,000 to do this? Will you be able to answer the question then?
Not with authority.
Yeah.
You know, I would do my best.
Yeah, and that's the best I think you can do. And so I think we need to just prepare that at some point this may be something that is gonna unfortunately be put on pause. This piece of what we're doing anyway. But as you know, we've discussed, Dan, a little bit. You know, this is the biggest piece for us to move forward. So,
And I mean,
I don't really have I had a question, more of a statement. That's kind of what that was.
I think one other piece to kind of like incorporate, since seem to be the one that throws these wrenches in. I guess it's my job at this point. You know, there is the piece that I kind of sprung on the committee, which is the fact that I was interested in potentially looking at a campus approach.
That's coming.
Right.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda. I mean, I could probably address it a little bit, right? Or do you want me to wait?
Let me finish. Is there anybody else on the appropriation? Then we'll get into the mayor's campus proposal. Okay, this proposal was online for the public and for everybody here. Has everybody looked at it? Mayor,
Okay.
I'm sorry you're talking a lot, but that's your job.
It is. It's fine. So really, you know, the genesis of this idea was trying to think about, you know, our history together on the city councilor, all the times that we've had to go out to the public and say, we want to do this project. We want to sell this project because we feel that it's important, right? So building a coalition. And I was trying to think from the comments that I was hearing, from the feedback that I was getting, I was trying to find a way to create a project that might serve the needs of the city in a robust way, but also broaden the appeal of the project overall to the voters. Now, you know, this is what I said before this aside, right? Because I don't know if there's an appetite for an override and an exclusion anyway. And as I started to think of this, I started to think of the needs that the city has. You know, we lost Pepin. I did try to, you know, I went over to Pepin early in my tenure to see if we could reclaim the gym. You know, there was a water main break and the floor was destroyed. So we couldn't use Pepin as a gym. So, you know, the winter programs for youth suffered because there wasn't enough space. And we've known for years that Easthampton needs a gym. And I was like, well, you know, the seniors, while kids are in school, having a gym could be a really great addition to programming, to having space. You know, I think all around it could be a beneficial thing to include in a project. And, you know, our Parks and Rec, like I said before, they've been historically neglected by the city of Easthampton. They've been living out of a trailer for the last 10 years or more, maybe. And so I was like, this could be a great opportunity for us to do something that serves the needs of our seniors with a modern, you know, state-of-the-art facility, with a potential space for a gym that they could use during the day and whenever, and a Parks and Rec building. We just, you know, through fees and programs, Parks and Rec is going to be able to fund a rec coordinator that's going to be coordinating, you know, different sports. You know, Parks and Rec is going to be incorporating youth soccer, youth baseball, and some of these other sports for the first time ever. And I was like, this could be a great match. And as I started to talk about this and started to look at this, you know, one of the things that came up was the intergenerational connections that could be made, and selling this in a way that it's not just a senior center, it's an intergenerational community center that has a dedicated senior component and has a component where there's, you know, mixed generation crossover. And that really kind of opened up some funding pathways that I thought were exciting, from congressional earmarks to state programs. And so I put together this idea and started to throw it out there. And, you know, I think it's a good idea. And I think that there's benefits to it. There's probably some drawbacks too. But I at least wanted to say, how do we have the biggest impact for the community? You know, and it doesn't get cheaper to build necessarily if we were going to say, just do a senior center this time and then look down the road to do a community center of some sort. And so that's why I thought it was valuable to put forward to have people discuss and talk about. And yeah, if you have questions about that, I'm happy.
Okay, the first part of this is questions from and answers and comments from the committee only. Please. Oh, come on.
I guess just my statement is, or statement's more of a statement than a question.
That's what it's for.
You know, as the mayor, you're not tied to, this is not a either or, right? Like if this committee says, Salem, we think this is a great idea that you want to have a gym and all this other great stuff. That's not our focus. Our focus is the senior center. Do you think that would hurt our ability to move forward?
No, I don't think so. I just wanted to, like, really my intention here was to try to find the best possible project for the city.
Right.
Right. I have a little bit of a broader view.
Yeah.
And so, you know.
And to be fair, you know, you can ask Tom, one of the first places that I wanted to put this, it was, you know, on a park near that would incorporate combining the Parks and Rec and the senior center.
It's public knowledge.
It is, but Daily Field. Yeah, I wanted to use Daily Field and do something like that to kill two birds with one stone, to try and make this so that it was a project that would work and it would support not only the seniors but also the Parks and Rec. So, you know, there are many logistics that we found later that's really not an option. So it's not that I'm not in favor of helping the Parks and Rec folks or even the kids that want to play basketball or use these things, but I'm just worried that, you know, back the appetite and what people want to, what people are willing to vote on. And on a good day, maybe we could convince them to spend $15 million on a project for the senior center. On a great day, I should say. I think it would be a stretch that we would convince the voters to vote for a $35 million project. That's just my opinion. I don't know what the voters would come up with, and they could surprise me. But I just want to make sure that moving forward, if that we as a committee, I think, may come back to you and say, great, Mayor, we disagree. This is what we're looking to do. This is what we've been commissioned to work on. So just, again, more of a statement. I don't need an answer. It's just more of a statement.
Committee. Tom, and I'll get Leslie. Go, Tom.
I thought Leslie's hand went up first.
He's being a gentleman. Leslie.
Okay. So, there are a lot of things that concern me about what's being proposed. Because, you know, there was a group that came before this group that did a lot of study about state-of-the-art senior centers. And none of them were combined with other facilities. But I think I really have two other points that I want to make. First is what would be proposed as a combined facility is a lot of money. And you know, while $200 may not sound like a lot per year, first of all, I think it would probably end up being more than that. But the other is
You're talking about taxes?
I'm talking about taxes. There are a lot of people in this city who cannot afford that with everything else that is going up. And I think that's what's foremost in my mind. I mean, you know, I understand that Parks and Recs has needs, but maybe those should be looked at separately. You know, it's just a lot of things being commingled together, and it's not clear what the outcome would be and what other needs there are that aren't really out front. So,
Tom.
Just to piggyback on what Leslie said and clarify that this is really throwing darts at a dartboard. The approximation of the $200 a year in taxes was for the senior center. The whole complex would be approximately $400 a year increase in taxes. Not saying in a kind of gentler time that couldn't work, but one of my concerns would be that the volunteers we're not getting paid, are we?
Not that I know
The
of.
volunteers that step forward to serve on this committee step forward for the mission of a senior center. And all of us might have some expertise that lends to that mission, if you will, that project. I don't see any specific expertise around the table when it comes to a gym or a park and rec building. So I don't know that we could speak to what they need, what they want, what a gym entails. What does that mean for staffing? I know we've talked about the senior center only being open until 4 o'clock. We're going to build a $15 million building that closes at 4 o'clock every day. That's basically determined by staffing. You want to give us 10 more employees? We'll keep it open until 8 o'clock at night. Sorry, Cindy. But, and so again, what comes with that recreational complex is more people, more expenditures, more whatever. But you'd almost either have to have a separate committee or add more people to this committee to bring that I don't even know. Does John Mason want another gym? I've heard him say he can barely handle what he's got now.
I'll say when I pitched this idea, he wasn't upset.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're his boss. Sorry, that came out. I really didn't say that. The jury has to disregard.
Yeah, and the only other thought that went through my mind when you brought up your pie in the sky idea of Daily Field is I wonder, most of the times when a municipality is trying to use park and rec land, they're at odds with the park and rec board. If you're not at odds with them, if you're in agreement with them, I wonder how the legislature looks at that.
Article 97 is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Are they more apt to agree to allow the land to be used because the project's being supported by Park and Rec also?
I can say part of the silver lining here is we probably have a little bit of time to figure that out.
Exactly.
Anybody else on this proposal?
Yeah, so
David?
yeah, I do want to mention, so I think I'm not for or against at this moment because I don't have enough. I think thinking about the solutions and the needs of the city in terms of combining projects, and if that makes sense in this case, is a reasonable task. And I think, it's things that other cities and townships in Massachusetts have done. I was looking at a report, and one of the things I noticed, granted, it's further away in long ago, but in 2007 let me look at my notes, in Swampscott, there was a combination of a senior center and a high school that I believe AARP nationally sort of had as an example of an effective way of combining two things. And that one actually had to go through Article 97 because it was using, so I mean, there's precedent for it. So whether or not, and in that case, I think they did it because there was, obviously in our case, we've already built a new school, so we don't have the same need. Maybe back, we thought about it then, that was something we could have done. But that's, hindsight 2020. But I think we should be pursuing that or thinking about it if the combination makes sense. I mean, there's expertise, and if it's going to, save money and generate revenue. And so the questions I've sort of had from reading the report is, I think there's mention that additional gym space and loss of gym. I think if we're really trying to get buy-in support in that, we would want to know how much, in the current instance of the gyms we have, is there underutilization already occurring? And do we really have full need for a new gym? Maybe we do, but I think that needs to be articulated more. We need to really figure out where the needs and where the opportunities are. And, if it would generate revenue streams or, new possibilities. But I think it's reasonable given all that's occurring in terms of the financial state we are in now to think about ways of being wiser or maybe more prudent and sort of fiscally responsible with taxpayer money. But, the proposal obviously, I think, has a lot of costs associated with it. And, and obviously location and other things we're still trying to figure out.
Anybody else besides myself? Anybody else before Tom gets a second chance?
I have a question. I'm not sure if it belongs here, Jan, so you let me know if not. It's about this proposal, and similarly, I appreciate what you just said. I appreciate the idea of like we're a small town, we have limited resources, what are the needs and what makes sense. I also honor the work this committee has done for the last years on, trying to sort out what would be ideal and what would work for the seniors and what the needs are around that. And if there isn't going to be a money for a feasibility study to move forward on this committee, and I'm curious about the next steps. And I do think if there isn't another, I would just echo that if we're going to explore this other option, I think there either needs to be an additional committee or an extended committee or two committees where something where there's expertise around that, because I know we did do a few visits of combined centers way back when, a couple of years ago when we were first looking at this, and that was like a whole different sort of thing. And so I guess my question is about process. Like, what does this look like now? Because we're the senior center building committee. And so where do we go from here is my question.
That question will be answered with the 6th item on the agenda.
All right.
Tom,
I just wanted to comment on one thing that David said, which is in that 7 years of long grueling meetings with the school building committee, we did look at the possibility of locating a senior center on the same site. The architects actually did some pie in the sky sketches, things like that. And the site was much tighter than any of us thought. Look, if we didn't have a football field, it might have worked, but the football field was like sacred ground. And so if you look at the site today with wetlands and the football field, there was just no room for a senior center. But we did look at it long and hard about putting a senior center on that site because it was land the city already owned.
anybody else before I speak? Okay, I have a few things. I am still very much in favor of a standalone senior center. I think it's the only thing that the city can afford next 4 or 5 years. But the mayor deserves respect to have his draft project looked at, but it has to be looked at by a professional. An architect can look at that proposal, look at the cost per square foot, look at the buildings proposed, because you were very detailed, and tell us, well, my educated belief is it will cost this much. Because to me, cost is a huge component of it. Now, this committee was formed for a standalone senior center. And if this committee decides, and I'm hoping that's what our prerogative is, to go with a campus proposal, there needs to be a new committee. Because as I think was Dawn had said, or Tom, we need expertise in the park and rec areas. I am in favor of a standalone senior center for a lot of reasons. One is we've already done 2 years of work. The ad hoc report has tremendous detail. And one of the details is the site. We've come to the Park Street site because of a lot of factors. And what we need now is an engineering, traffic, all the studies an architect can do for that site before moving forward, because what if there's something wrong? We can't do it there, or it's going to cost, there's a lot of clay and we can't do more. So without that architect, we can't go on. Now, if we add to the architect, study the mayor's proposal, I have it on pretty good authority. That's another $50,000 in the appropriation. So that's something for you to think about, because these two proposals have to be looked at with as much information as we can get. Now, when we're looking at the proposals, we may decide, I do, that the senior center part of the campus proposal is a little weak, needs to be more broad, not 12,000 square feet, 16,000 square feet, and it needs to have the things that the ad hoc committee looked at. I wrote that as part of the committee. So without an architect to really get into this, because they've built these things, the architect we will hire is someone not only for the cost, it's not just a low bid thing, it's how many senior centers have you built? If they've built a lot of senior centers, they know what seniors need, they have to. They're the experts. So that's where I'm at. with the process, to answer your question, and we'll get to why we might pause this committee. It's because we can't determine if Park Street is okay. And if we need to look for another site, that puts us back a few months just for this committee. So that's where I'm at. I'm still very much in favor of only a standalone senior center because of the cost. But to be honest with you, figures are thrown out here, $200, $400 taxes. We have no idea. So we need to look at this with complete information. So that's where I'm at.
Can I just add really quickly? I know we're not in a rush at this moment, because we can't be. And and I just want to acknowledge the fact that Park Street has limitations, and I think that maybe one of the things that we can do in the meantime is I don't know if this committee ever actually went out and walked the parcels. It might be, now that we have extra time, it might be beneficial to put boots on the ground as spring arrives and look specifically at parcels. I know that there's resources in the community. There's some folks that on the conservation committee that have drones, that have LiDAR. And, there are some things that we can do in the meantime while we're in a holding pattern to determine some of the feasibility around these sites, which I think would be, it would behoove us to do that. Because, I think that as this process becomes a little bit more elongated, we might find that with some resources that we have in-house, we can make some of these determinations and determine if these sites are appropriate. And also, I think with a little bit of time, we don't know, there might be some sites that become available to us that might be even more better. For lack of a better word, right? Thanks, Pat.
Any English teachers?
It's my English.
Yeah, there you go. But I just wanted to put that out. I think that there is still some work we can do that doesn't cost money, that uses the resources and the skills that we have within the city to kind of move part of this process along. Because I think there are some legitimate concerns around, siting and I think it would make sense if with this time that we have to look at that, under a little bit more of a microscope to say, hey, these are the parcels we looked at. Dan really loves Park Street. How do we determine if that is appropriate or if there's another one that might be more appropriate as we move down the line?
Well, I can answer two things.
Sure.
I don't love Park Street. I'm with Pat. It's the best of tough decisions.
Right.
We came through this at the ad hoc committee looking at city-owned property. And we have a tremendous resource we use to look at the city properties we already studied that were available, and that's our planner. Allison has done a deep dive on these things, and that's why we ended up at Park Street. And we decided as a committee that, say, Highland Avenue, if the committee decides, and we could still change our mind, we'd rather move to a different parcel, okay. But the parcels the city owned are already looked at. So I'm not necessarily in agreement with you. I would like to move this committee along. If there's no more questions from here, I'm going to open it to the public, but only about this campus proposal. There will be public speak about anything, or anything involving the senior center. If you're going to complain about the roads, I might cut you. Go ahead and state your name for the record, please. It's on.
Hi, Elaine Wood, 9 Overlook Drive, Easthampton, senior. It's like the second time I've said that. I am on the dog park committee. 2019, they did was it a feasibility study, I think, of all the city properties to find a dog park. And I spoke with the man who did it, and he hadn't even been to the sites. Like, he was literally using a maps to find the properties. So we actually, the dog park committee, several people on the dog park committee walked all these sites. I've walked Park Street. Are you talking about the front of Park Street or the back?
Well, it's the back.
Good
Yes.
answer. I walked it, it's wetlands. It's absolutely wetlands. And when you get to White Brook, it's a drop to White Brook. That would require a bridge. The amount of money that would cost. And if you were gonna actually access that, there's literally an access road to the back piece of property. I've been to all these properties looking for the dog park. And I don't understand why we're doing a feasibility study when there's already been a study done on a lot of these properties. That it's not, it would cost way too much money just to put a road in. It would make more sense to access from Button Road
Well-
or whatever.
I have to stop you.
Okay,
That's kind of public speak.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I just want you to talk about the campus proposal.
well, I actually like that idea, but several years ago, back when the schools closed and they were selling, they put out to bid to find somebody to run the gym, to run the basketball court. And nobody responded. So they dropped that. They dropped it because nobody ever responded. That was 5 years ago. Well, that's one of the, what's the school? Is it not Pepin, but the other one? Was it Pepin? Yeah. And nobody responded. They were trying to get like Boys and Girls Club to run it or somebody to run it. Nobody responded. So nobody wanted to run it. And the Parks and Rec can't afford to run it. So that plan got dropped.
Okay,
So
thank you. Anybody else on the campus proposal from the mayor? No. Oh, Amanda Newton online. And this is only about the campus proposal, Amanda?
Yes. Hi. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm really interested in the campus proposal. I think it's something that we should look at more closely before we move forward with just a senior center. In my mind, this is potentially like our last shot at a really great new building. We've already got our 2 new schools, we've got our public safety complex. I think that if we were to build our senior center and not also build a recreation center along with that, I think that we might end up not getting a recreation center at all. And so I really am very interested in doing a campus type thing and studying that feasibility. I think it would be really well used by the Parks and Rec. The basketball courts, I even would love a pool, to be honest. I think that the Camp Nonotuck people would use it in the summer during bad weather. So, I would like to do some more studying and committee work on that campus thing.
Well, that's what we want to do. Can I ask Allison if you could come forward about Park Street's wetlands? Because I believe you looked at that.
Is that about the
But if you're not,
proposal, Leah?
huh?
Is that about the campus proposal?
Yeah, because if we can't build it on Park Street, sorry. Please.
So I'm not a wetland scientist, so I can't delineate wetlands. But there's a substantial area that is upland from White Brook, between White Brook and Park Street is where we were looking, without having to cross the wetlands or White Brook to build the facility.
I believe you said there were 7 acres from the buffer zone and those wetlands you're talking about.
In that area, in that range, yeah, I don't remember the exact number. And we're measuring, I'm not a surveyor either, so I can't measure precisely, but yeah, it was a significant acreage that was outside of that.
And the reason I bring that up is if it's 7 acres, it might have room for a campus. Okay, so it's not necessarily out.
You connected. I see.
Thank you.
Good job, Danny.
Kira, campus proposal.
Hi, this is Kira Henninger. I am the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, and I just want to give a little bit of context to start. The Parks and Rec Commission had started back with Mayor LaChapelle, a kind of process that we started for a new maintenance building. Some of you may have noticed that the maintenance building has been taken down at Daly Field. It has been in disrepair for over a decade. And we were in the process, right now, our staff are in trailers. And so our timeline is very much needing to move forward as quickly as possible with an entire city department working without an appropriate place to do the work. And so our process was that we had architects draw plans for the maintenance building, which also included some community bathrooms and a community space, as well as some updated offices for the staff. And that proposal was shared with Mayor Derby when he took over. And we shared kind of that's where we were in the process, and we were ready to move forward with our next step. At a follow-up meeting, Mayor Derby kind of presented this campus proposal to us, and we said, well, this would just be way too long to wait to move in terms of a process and getting the maintenance building and getting our city workers the appropriate workplace. And so we are looking into a different building that would just be replacing kind of what is needed for maintenance for those workers now. And if that was to be able to happen more quickly, we said we would be open to having a discussion about this campus proposal. I agree with what everyone has said, that if there's going to be a campus proposal moving forward to an architectural stage, there would need to be a combined committee because we have different needs and different requirements for what the departments would need. And so that would need to be a collaborative process. So I just wanted to give some context so you kind of knew where Parks and Rec fit in all of this, and kind of whatever's decided moving forward, we're happy to collaborate.
Thank you, Kira. It's good to hear from you. Anything else on the campus proposal? Okay, how many people want to speak at public speak? Raise your hands. It's not too many. I'm going to give you not 1 minute, but 2 minutes, and I'm going to open the floor now. Anything on the senior center is open to your, I don't necessarily want to talk about potholes, so please. Senior center building project, thank you. Who wants to go first? You already spoke.
Yeah, but you told me I couldn't
Different
speak about senior center.
projects.
And I have a class to go to in 10 minutes. Elaine Wood, senior. Is there a reason why we can't look at the back property on Park Street? Has that already been ruled out?
We're not doing questions and answers. You can.
Oh,
make
okay,
comments.
that's right. Okay. I just found out that there's a property on Holyoke Street that is part of the city that I didn't even know when we were looking at it for the dog park, that would have an exit or entrance on East Street, across from East Street. To me, that makes more sense than coming off of Park Street and a heck of a lot closer to town. But we need something closer to town. You can't.
You can't.
You can't, yeah, you can't.
We'll talk as a
I can
committee
speak,
after.
but yeah, but I have to go to a class. I just don't understand this property so far from the center of town. It's not accessible. I did look at property on, what is the street? Williston Ave, that we looked at it for the dog park, and we chose not to because we didn't want it next to the cemetery because we figured it'd be disruptive to funerals. But that seems to be a reasonable, close to town piece of property on Wilson Ave. That seems reasonable and not wetlands. Just giving out suggestions because I've walked all these properties.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Montgomery, and I live at 222 Park Street, which would be a very close neighbor to this proposed senior center campus. The road would cut between my neighbor and I and go down all the way down one side of my yard. And the senior center would be behind my house, which is a fully wooded lot right now in between my house, and Whitebrook, which is also known to be wet. By anybody who knows the area knows it's wet. And I think you guys already know kind of that it's a lot of clay there. I do want to say that the campus proposal seems enormous to fit that space. It's 6 to 7 acres, and I think you guys want to develop 4 of it. And you want, you know, the senior center building with gym space and a public, you know, like this big garage to house all the public works, or not the public works, but the parks and recs vehicles, 150 to 200 parking spaces. And then there's talk about selective tree cutting. You're going to have to take damn near all of those 4 acres of trees down. So there are 9 houses that would border that property on Park and on Button in all of our backyards. I just don't think it's an appropriate spot. It's going to be largely disruptive. It's going to be very costly. And I want to invite every single one of you and anybody else who wants to come to my house, come stand in my driveway, come walk down in my backyard and come see this space. Because I think if you were to stand there and look, and I said, this is where they want to put it, I don't think that you would think it made sense for a senior center. And it's not just about me. I also hate the idea of clearing forest to do that. I hate the idea of clearing forest for anything. So if there are open spaces or other options, I think that they should always be looked at before clearing forest, because the people of Easthampton are tired of seeing our trees cut down to make way for new buildings all the time, when there are other things you can look into.
Thank you, Molly. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Peter Soderberg. I live at 25 Strong Street, East Hampton. Before I say what I want to say about Park Street, I just wanted to direct my statement to you, sir. I think your use of PTSD as a joke punchline in the other room was totally inappropriate. You should know better. It's 2026.
I would agree with you.
Mental health is not something.
It's a good criticism.
Second of all, I just wanted to reiterate what Molly said. And actually, better than more better would be more appropriate. Looking for a better site that's more appropriate than Park Street. As a senior, not quite a senior, I'm one of those Jen Jones, I guess, right on the cusp. I can't imagine wanting to go to a senior center where they've cut down acres of trees. It just, to me, it's a beautiful wooded property. There's tons of wildlife that goes through there and uses that area as a natural crossway through different environments and their habitats. The idea of, disrupting something like that, which is a great resource for kids that live in the area to utilize and explore nature, to put up, and instead put up a 200 car parking lot, to me, totally inappropriate. So I would just wish that you would continue to look at other sites more carefully. And I do like the idea of the campus concept. I think you have a better shot at convincing the voters to override. You got younger voters with rec, you have older voters with seniors. Everybody's getting something out of the deal, maybe. I think that you have a better shot at doing that, but I think there's better places that are closer to downtown, where all these people that are going to be coming into using this gym potentially also have access to other services. There's nothing out there. There's no supermarket, there's no store, there's no restaurant, there's nothing for people to go to if they're using that for basketball tournaments or what have you. So I think it would be better places in town to consider.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Owen Zarin. I live at 74 Florence Road here in Easthampton. I just want to briefly first thank this committee for the hard work that they've put into this thus far. We all know the many hours that you spend unpaid to bring a new senior center to Easthampton. There is no question that this community needs an upgrade to their senior center building. However, I would caution you all to maybe pause and think for a second if we're rushing too quickly headlong into a decision to place on the parcel that's recommended. I appreciate the perspective of a potential neighbor for this project. But we also became aware earlier this meeting of the potential financial constraints that this city will be facing. And I really appreciate the transparency of the mayor in bringing that forward and the prudence in both holding in one hand the need for this project and in the other hand, the financial challenges facing the city. We have one shot to do this right. And while the parcel that is being proposed at Park Street is the best that is available among what's been reevaluated, I would challenge you all to potentially go back to the drawing board and see what other options there are. There are challenges facing this parcel. The soil is complicated to build on. It's clay soil. We have a feasibility study predating the dog park discussion. They wanted to put housing on that parcel previously. If you go back into the annals of planning, you will find it. And so you may be able to glean some knowledge from that. I really appreciate the mayor thinking outside the box, or the gymnasium, so to speak, with this campus idea. I think that clearly what's been stated here today, there's no rush to do this. We don't even have the funds available yet or pledged to do a feasibility study. So why not stop and slow down for a second and say, should we bring some other folks into this project to discuss a campus proposal, a campus concept? Have that conversation, then circle back and decide what's the best idea, standalone, a campus, and then move forward. I thank you all for your time and for your commitment to this. You're doing important work here, and let's just do it right.
Thank you. Sir, come on up.
It's building on what he just said. Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
Tell us who you are.
Sure. I am Jim Frukin. I live on Pelican Drive. Just based on what everybody's saying and what he just said, and you may have done this, but I'm just asking the question. Do we have population data? So if we're looking at a senior center and we're looking at the age and the numbers of the age, and so we really have some data to support the need, or to actually sort of really calculate the need, really, in terms of what we need. How big should it be? Where should it? All the details that you're all talking about, I think, have to do with the community and what its needs are. And so really looking at the data, I think, would be another additional piece of work to do. It's pretty straightforward too.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, ma'am.
You talking to me? Okay, I'm Leslie Scher. I live on Nashawanic Street.
Wasn't Leslie, but go ahead. There was somebody else in the room, but you're okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I just wanted to say I like the idea of the campus simply for the economy of scale. It's cheaper to put one building up with two wings than it is to put two separate buildings in two separate places. You've got all that site work that has to be done. And if we wait a couple of years, we're going to be closer to the end of the debt exclusion for the high school. And that can be a selling point when you go for another debt exclusion for a combined building, as opposed to saying, well, we're going to need a debt exclusion for the senior center, and then we're going to have to do something about Parks and Rec, if indeed we haven't realized that Parks and Rec needs it more. Because how can we expect people to work safely and happily and productively if they're stuck in temporary quarters? Also, I rather like the idea of Salem's idea about the back end of the cemetery. I would rather see that used for city purposes rather than used as a chemical leaching field for graves. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, you can come.
Wendy Taylor Jordan, Sheldon Avenue. I agree with what Jim was saying about, is there the need? And also from the standpoint, speaking to senior center director in a neighboring community, what I heard was that the seniors who are not baby boomers, the new seniors are not interested in senior centers. So once we boomers die out, are you really going to need a big senior center?
She was looking at you.
The idea, and I think the park and rec idea would be more sellable. The campus idea would be more sellable than a standalone senior center.
Thank you. Last call. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Mary Lou Splain and I live on Treehouse Circle. So I've been involved in the dog park situation where they wanted to come down Button. I've watched them dump the sludge from pond. I've watched them dump the old football field before the school was built when they put the new turf in. I've watched that back there. I know that there was affordable housing proposal and they've done studies as Lynn had mentioned. So I think you need to look at that. I also know Park Street very well. It's busy at certain times of the day. People fly down that road. And the access from 226 down, it's steep. It's not a flat. So you're talking about wintertime and ice and more of a problem. And I'm going to speak to Wendy's senior center. I am a boomer. I would never go to the senior center. They have great programs, but I'm not interested in that. I think an intergenerational, I would love to see seniors working with students after school. I would love to see, even athletic things with seniors and exposing kids to, dealing with seniors, art classes, help with school, reading, whatever it is. I think we can look at Treehouse Foundation as a model where they are involved. The seniors there are involved with the foster kids that are there. It's a beautiful situation. So I think we have time. We might as well spend that time looking at things. And you guys, I know, have spent a ton of time going through things, but again, maybe stepping back and looking. I had never heard of or wasn't aware of the meetings and that were presented. And I am aware, I didn't know how to find out the information. And so I would have spoken up sooner, but
Thank you.
thank you.
Go ahead, sir. Ma'am, excuse me.
I had no idea.
It's appropriate. I should be ignoring.
Beth Tiffany, 190 Park Street. Been listening and listening. It's complex. I do go to the senior center, and I thought when I retired it wasn't even in my purview. But I went, and I love it. I love the staff. I've done the arts. I do the hikes. I go to UMass shows. I don't have to drive. Somebody does it for me. I kick back and enjoy myself. One of the hardest things is parking. Anybody that goes to the senior center, where do you park? Fortunately, there's good neighbors. Big E's, the vacant store that they don't let us, but we park there. The access to the elevator to drive in, there's about 4 spots. It's very tight. It's difficult. If you have someone with you that has a walker or needs to use the elevator, it's not easy. And if there's other cars back there, I have a little car and it's hard to turn around. I do see the need for a senior center. I just do. It's tight. Inside as well, the programs. If there was more space, there'd be more things, more people could join in. That being said, I see the need for the senior center. I also like the intergenerational idea. And I also feel that the park department needs a decent place to work. So it's really hard to say what comes first in the priority. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you
But
very
to
much.
say the senior center isn't necessary, I just have to say I do not agree with that at all. And I honestly don't have any problem with it being on Park Street. I live on Park Street. School's in my backyard. I get lots of traffic from it. I get lots of noise. I hear the football. I could go on and on. But
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. I just want to tell the public that we, first of all, and I think you guys will all agree, this is not a done deal. Park Street is not a done deal. Nothing is a done deal, but we need professional guidance. Without professional guidance, we don't know what a campus center would look like. Would it fit there? Maybe one of these other sites that the ad hoc committee looked at would be better. And I'm open to more discussion on it. But I feel we're at the point where we've done a lot of work and we could revisit all that work with an architect who knows, who's built a senior center and knows what we should have been looking for. He may know all about, he may walk on Park Street and say, you can't build it there. Okay, but that's a professional. I am going to ask the conservation person, Eva, what do we call it? Conservation, to go down there and look at it for me, because everybody's talking about wetlands and I didn't get that from Allison, but that's just me. Anyway, nothing is a done deal. We're pretty far away from it. And there will be, if we make decisions on a site, we'll have plenty of open forums where you can all complain about the site, or you can say, hey, not bad, but we're going to look at everything again. Our last thing on here is, I feel, and I put this on here because I don't want to continue this committee work without that professional guidance, because we're designed to be a committee to investigate a standalone senior center. But unless we compare the mayor's proposal with ours, how do we make a decision on whether he should move forward with his proposal and hire another committee? I want to pause this committee. If an appropriation comes forward, and I'll be calling the mayor. I have his cell phone. But I think he's been very transparent about the budget and the situation of our economy. So I'm willing to wait. But I hope you agree with me that we need professional guidance. So I'd like to hear from the committee, should we pause this? Because I don't know what else we can do except revisit everything we've done already. Anybody, Tom?
I just want to back up for a moment. Now that you've closed public speak, should we respond to a few things that were raised? Can I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, I promise. Holyoke Street site. Someone mentioned that beautiful site. Love to put it there. At the bottom of the mountain, across from East Street and Hendrick Street. Public safety's already said, no way. You have seniors driving out of there, 100 cars coming out of an event into East Street, Hendrick Street, and the Mountain Road, just looking for a problem. Everyday traffic coming out there. Everyday traffic, thank you. Williston Avenue, 3 acres, and I'm 98% sure that land is expected to be reserved for future cemetery expansion. Brookside Cemetery will fill up someday, and you'll be looking for places, we all will, to bury our dead. 3 acres, as I said, the proposed site, after all the studies, after all the visits, everyone is telling us 5 acres minimum is what we need for a new senior center to allow for 100 to 150 parking spaces. A lot of questions. Why do you need all that parking? Cindy will be the first one to tell you that our senior center offers virtually every program any other senior center does. The difference is we might have 10 to 20 people in each event, because that's all we can fit in the building. We go to other senior centers, there's 50 to 60 people in each event. If you build it, they will come. Dan, you had said was at a program in South Hadley. There were Easthampton residents at that program in South Hadley because they couldn't fit in the program in Easthampton. That's why you need 100 parking spaces. If you build it, they will come. And lastly, on the far from town comment, or concern, I should say, sorry, not comment, concern. We recently had an event at the senior center. UMass has been working with us for data, tons of data about why you need a senior center, what a senior center should provide. There were 35 to 40 people in the room. I just asked out of curiosity, how many people walked here today? And 2 hands went up out of 35 to 40 people. People don't walk today, unfortunately, to your senior center. Find me 5 acres downtown and we'll build it there. It doesn't work in the Walgreens building. It doesn't work in empty buildings. For too many years, the senior center has been in an old something. And it's time for a senior center that's built to serve as a senior center. Thank you for that.
Okay, can we talk about pausing the committee, which is
Go
what
for
I
it.
started at?
Go for it.
Does anybody have a comment on what I said? Because it's important. I don't want to make this decision as chair. I want the committee to, do you agree with me that we need professional expertise to move forward, waiting on the mayor's ability to give us an appropriation?
I do.
Okay, do you agree?
I agree. Yeah.
And the other thing I want to say, we would be going back and forth, and Cindy didn't tell me to say this, or Dawn, but the staff has a lot to do at the COA, and spinning our wheels here is a waste of their time. So I don't want them to feel that they have to go to these meetings, Dawn and Cindy, because we have really nothing to talk about except what we already talked about. So I wanted to put that out there. Cindy.
I want to say there's also a council on aging, which is the advisory board for the senior center and for all aging needs in the city. That board itself has visited centers, done research, and advised that the ad hoc committee or a building committee be created. At that time, the mayor created it as an ad hoc committee. And what I want to say is that if this committee pauses, that committee and the staff will not stop researching the best practices of having a modern senior center, how you serve each generation, how you serve, because remember, the seniors are in Easthampton are considered age 55 up. That is different types of people. And within each age range, you can have a 92-year-old and a 66-year-old who are, the 92-year-old is the more active, right? So people have different needs. So we already have a body that is constituted, that is charged with continually assessing what the current senior center should be doing and what the needs are for a future senior center. So that will not stop. The other thing is that we have a statewide body, the Massachusetts Councils on Aging. We have our statewide elder services agency. We are continually getting professional development and talking there about what we need. So I'm not afraid of if we pause and things roll on. Now Gen X, so I'm the oldest Gen Xer as a 1966er. I'm not worried that in whenever time period we come back again, maybe there's new information, like somebody said about, what do they want? But you can have a Beth Tiffany who just spoke in public, so who thought they were allergic to a senior center and just came and did a little gardening, and then all of a sudden they're a super fan, so I think there's work that can be done without making the building committee spin its wheels. And then secondly, we really need to hear from parks, what is happening with them. And we need to see how that process unspools. And I'm, in touch with them, of course, as colleagues and co-staff, but also there's the Parks Commission, their next meeting when they're, looking at all of this. So I want to hear what's happening with them. And I've said it in public and I've said it to the committee, I think that parks comes first in terms of the environmental conditions that their people work under and their needs for running their park. We have a senior center where people can go about their business and at least get some of the senior center functions done. We're going to be totally transparent about that. But at the same time, there are conditions at the senior center that need work. There's deferred maintenance on that building. There's projects that have been put off specifically because there was a vision that there would be a new senior center in maybe 4 to 6 years. So as the Council on Aging Director, while this committee is either operating or paused, I'm going to be coming back and saying to the mayor and city council and my fellow departments, there's people freezing and they're wearing parkas to play dominoes, you know? There's people who don't feel safe because there's no fresh air exchange in the classroom downstairs. And it's hard for them to hear and us to hear them when they're wearing masks. And we've tried to fix some of these problems as best as we can. And then there's all the accessibility issues. There was a study done of that building that and I'm going off on a tangent here, of all the things that were not accessible. We have a big laundry list there, put off because we're going to build another building. So I have to say, even if this pauses, I'm still going to be there fighting for a new senior center, whether it's part of another project or a standalone center. I'm not going to shut up about it. And it's my job to continually campaign for it, whether there's a committee or not. And I invite the public to keep telling me what you want as just in my role.
So, Pat.
Just quickly, I know that anybody who's ever asked or made questioned like the process and what we've done over the last couple of years, I'm going to suggest to the mayor at some point that the 2 studies that are, I think, very important for everyone to really look at. I think most people in the room already know why we need a senior center and the process of where we are. Salem, at some point, if we could, on the Council on Aging city portion of the website, if we can put those 2 studies, the one from 21 or 22, the big one that really it gives pictures of bad things happening over there, and our ad hoc committee. Ad
hoc committee report?
Yes, yeah. If you could put those 2 somewhere closer, that I found them. It took me a little while, and I'm able to do some Googling, but they should be in a more prominent place so that folks, either when they're on the planning department page or the Council on Aging page or this committee's page, they can just find those 2 reports. I suggest that anybody at home who's watching this take a look at those reports just to kind of really help you understand kind of where we are. So.
Okay, the matter before us is pausing this committee, at which time an appropriation can be given to us. Can I have a motion to do that?
I will make a motion to pause this committee's activities until June, when you can talk with the mayor and see where we are with this.
I'm going to talk with them a lot before that.
Well, I'm going to put June out there as the motion for now.
Can I have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second to pause the committee's work until which time as of June 1st, when the mayor might be able to give us an appropriation, I guess. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstaining?
I'm abstaining from that because
Cindy's an abstention.
I don't know. Do I need to explain or no?
It's up to you.
Okay, can I take a second? So the original idea, what Dan was asking us about, is pausing until there's a feasibility study. And the mayor was very clear, I thought, at the beginning of his comments, that this fiscal year, there will not be money for a feasibility study. And we're talking about next year, but maybe I misheard that. I know we're in the middle of the vote, so.
We already voted.
And you already voted, but that's just why
You're abstaining.
I don't think you didn't. I don't think the mayor didn't say it couldn't happen now, like June.
Yeah, he's waiting for the budget to be done. He's waiting for the budget to be done to make a decision.
Right. Better
But we did vote on that.
Okay.
So I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.